Okay, I'll keep my eye on the room just in case anyone else comes in, but let's get cracking. So for all of the guests, just a little bit of housekeeping before we dive in. Can I just ask you all to keep your microphones on mute just to avoid any echo and any feedback. We will be in here for the first 45 minutes of the event, and then we're going to be going over to the Slack channel for a Q&A on Channel 2 community questions, where the guys here will be happy to continue to answer your questions. Feel free to pop anything in the chat as we go along, but we like to then transfer those questions over to the Slack so people have got them to refer back to and catch up on. Obviously, if you're watching this recording, they're not going to be able to see the chat as it comes through. So without further ado, let's crack on. Welcome everybody. Welcome to landing your first design job. I think in any industry, this is always super, super tough. You know, I need experience to get a job. I need a job to get experience. So we have got 4 fantastic members of the Fearless community here who are all at the early part of their career, who have all managed to secure a junior position, and they're going to be talking through their journeys and how they did that and what tips they can give you to help you stand out and get your foot in the door and that step on the ladder for your design career. So I'm Laura Baxter. I am the Fearless community manager. As I say, it's an absolute privilege to be leading all of you guys. It's great to see everybody from all around the world. Thank you so much for joining. So let's meet our panelists. So apologies, guys, I'm just going in the order that you appear on my screen. I'm not picking on anybody, but Kirsten, let's hear from you and a little introduction from you first.
Yep, cool. I'm Kirsten, and I'm an early stage designer at a design agency in London called Invika. I'm originally from Texas, but I live in Sheffield now in the UK. I have a degree in anthropology, and I have kind of a background in admin within the public sector and also in finance. I think like a lot of other people, I started my transition into the design world during lockdown. So I was a stay-at-home mom during that time, and after doing a coding lesson with my daughter, I ended up teaching myself how to code, and then started on the Google UX design course in March of 2021. I finished my first case study in April, and then I spent the next 5 months like building up my portfolio and networking through LinkedIn and just taking every opportunity I could to improve my skills. I ended up getting a contract job with a startup to design an app prototype, and also volunteered with a nonprofit called Ruby for Good. They build tech solutions for other nonprofits. And I got the opportunity to apply for my current role in August of 2021. I've been working there since October. So I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to answering your questions and hopefully help you get started in design too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kirsten. Let's go to Anders next.
Hey everyone, so I'm Anders. I'm based in Sweden and Gothenburg on the West Coast. I'm an art director and graphic designer. I recently graduated from Hyper Island in Stockholm, and I was hired by an agency in Berlin, working there remotely with something that I really didn't like doing or wanted to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, being specific in your role. Then I moved down to Gothenburg and started at agency as a junior art director, working conceptually and having a lot of fun. And now I might move back to Stockholm again, starting a new company. We'll see. So yeah, short and brief introduction. Looking forward to talking to you soon.
That's perfect. Thank you. And Dee, over to you.
Thanks, Laura. Hey, everyone. Glad to see you all. So my name is Dee, and I'm a UX designer at Avast. I fully transitioned back in May 2021 after about 15 years in investment banking. So a very late career transitioner, but I guess better late than never. My journey here was kind of similar to Kirsten's in that I first started off learning how to code at the tail end of a maternity leave, but I quickly realized I did not have the aptitude for coding, but still persevered and went to a hackathon where to try and apply my learnings. And at the hackathon, that's where I met a UX designer, and everything he said resonated with me, his client-centric language, always bringing it back to the user. So I took the opportunity to organize a coffee chat with him where I learned more about it. And then back in January 2020, that I took the plunge and joined the Skill Crush Bootcamp. After bootcamp, ran out to loads of agencies, saying, give me a job. I want a job in UX. And some they were quite honest with me and said, you know what, Dee, with your one case study, it's very slim pickings out there, and there's no way you're going to find a job. So better spend a few months just trying to build up your portfolio, which is what I did from June 2020 to November 2020. I worked on 3 side projects, some internships, just to get myself in a stronger position to start applying. So in December 2021, I started applying for roles. Sorry, in December 2020, I started applying for roles. But then in applying, I was just going out and just applying for everything UX related. And, I decided that it wasn't until I got this interview for a part-time UX role that was, you know, that was paying 8,000 pounds a year. Oh, sorry. That was paying 8,000 pounds a year. When I got to the interview, I realized the interviewer shared with me that the role itself was I'll be the only UX designer. And I was also going to be building out a new feature. So clearly not a part-time role. So it just forced me to be more deliberate about my applications for different jobs. So I started just really researching the companies, be more specific about where I was applying. And, within a month with this new deliberate, more thoughtful way of applying, I was able to get 3 interviews within a month. One of them was with my current company. And I haven't looked back since then. And I hope that whatever I share is able to help anyone. And obviously, at the end of this, reach out on LinkedIn if needed. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks, Dee. I think we've already seen a little glimpse into there to some of the things we're going to be talking about into how to really hone in your search. So that's great to hear your experience. Kalista, over to you. Let's have a little introduction to you.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Kalista. So I am from Singapore, but I'm currently based in London. So I'm currently a UX designer at Verified Ed, doing education credentials on the blockchain. So I started I graduated from the General Assembly Bootcamp back in May 2021, similar to Dee. So ever since then, I have been, on the lookout for jobs. And I am a business graduate, so I actually started out my career, in a very different industry as compared to, design and UX. I was actually from the airline industry with Singapore Airlines. So it was also at Singapore Airlines where I was actually part of a product team, actually working on UAT testing, as well as, going into the nitty-gritty details of like improving the customer experience of their website and their mobile app. But unfortunately, back then, I think I wasn't aware that I was actually doing UX. So yeah, it was through trial and error and also 10 years of working experience that I've actually arrived to like where I am right now. So yeah, I think my journey has been quite a long one, but it's also very fulfilling because I think through trial and error, I have also, explored different career paths and found that UX is actually what I, enjoy doing, and I kind of rekindle my flame with UX. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to share more with you guys.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Wonderful introductions from all of you there, and all both similar and quite different journeys in various different elements. So let's go right back to the beginning then. Presumably a lot of the juniors here on this event are looking for their first role right now. So what would you say is the most important thing you do before you start looking for a job? What do you need to have in place before you just go and throw yourself out there and hope that something gets picked up?
Yeah, so maybe for myself, I'll start and share. I think planning and research is very important. For a start, I think after I graduated from my bootcamp in May 2021, because part of the bootcamp was also, we had to go through like career coaching. So it was also during then we have to prepare our portfolio, our resume. But at the same time, I think personally, you need to list down like what you want in terms of your career objectives as well as your career goals. And then start, researching into all these roles in the various fields, as well as also go down deeper into like salary expectations. And then from there, do some networking as well. Yeah.
And Dee, I want to come to you with your introduction, what you were saying about how important it is to kind of really research your applications that you're doing. What more advice could you give around that?
I think before you start applying, make sure that you know your core values as a designer. So when you're researching companies, you can see if their core values align with yours. As a minority myself, it was quite important for me to see people that look like me on the company website, because then it showed that at least they'd given some thought to diversity. And also, to add to that, I would say it's also quite important to know how to tell your UX story or how you came to UX in an engaging and thoughtful manner. When I first started networking, and I spoke about how I came to UX, I could see the light leaving people's eyes because my story was so long-winded and just all over the place. And for UX, we're in the business of storytelling. So, how you came to UX, that's a very basic, that's the first question people will ask you, and you need to be able to answer that.
Brilliant. Yeah, I fully agree with that. How about you, Anders? Anything that you would add to that, the most important thing to do before you start your search?
I would actually try to network as much as possible. And if you don't know anyone, just ask your friends if they know anyone that you can come to a coffee meeting with, and just ask them about the role or whatever you're curious about, because it's going to differ so much from company to company. We're talking a lot about UX design. Yeah, you might be doing one specific thing at one company, but at company B, you might be doing something different, and depending on your role. So get as much pre-knowledge and network, and just ask people. If you ask them nicely, people are usually quite happy to tell their story. And then they might, if you ask them nicely, they might be your mentor, which is super valuable. And you set expectations of what you want them to be your mentor for, and what are the guidelines and stuff like that. And then start working on portfolios. And that's a huge subject, so we can go into that later. But for me personally, I've always wanted to do stuff myself, and I didn't even ask my friends. And then I realized that I had 3 of my best friends were amazing art directors and illustrators. One of them actually did all the illustrations for the Harry Potter book in Sweden, which is, I didn't even know it, but I knew that woman since like 10 years. So yeah, dare to ask people for help. I think that's the number one key.
Fantastic. And do you know what? I want to nicely link that onto you now, Kirsten, because obviously I know that part of your journey was finding a mentor. How, A, did you go about that? And B, how instrumental would you say that was in pushing your career forward and seeing you in your first job?
Yeah, so after I finished my first case study, I was doing the Google UX design course. So this was the first case study that I did through the course. So it's just like, it's not a real project. It's something that's kind of like made up, but it takes you through the design thinking process and helps you create this case study at the end. But with Google, you don't really get, you don't get a mentor to look at your work the way you do with like General Assembly or a lot of these other boot camps. So I knew that I needed someone who knew what they were doing to look at my work, because I didn't know if it was good or not. So the first thing that I did was I had already found this company in Vika that I work for now. And I knew that I wanted to work for them. I was just trying to figure out how to get there. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go to the head of design, and just ask her if she knows anyone that can mentor me. So I literally just messaged her on LinkedIn, not honestly thinking that she would probably never get back to me. But yeah, I just sent her a message and was like, hey, I'm doing this course. Like, I'm really like stuck. I don't really know where to go from here. I really need someone to help me just look at my work and tell me what I need to improve. And do you know anyone that might want to mentor me? And she was like, hey, I'll have a call with you. So I had a call with her. She looked at my case study, told me everything that was wrong with it. And then I went back and redid it, and she kind of helped me redo my portfolio and everything like that. And that eventually led to me getting this job. So to me, finding a mentor is integral to your success in finding a design job. Once you've started your portfolio and you have at least one full case study that goes through the whole process, you definitely need to find someone to look at your work. It also helps you be okay with receiving feedback. So that's one of the most important parts of our job as a designer, is to be able to take constructive criticism and use it to improve your work. If you can't do that, you're going to have a very hard time in this job. It's like a constant every day, this is wrong, you need to fix it. And you have to just be able to take that and move on and just do it. So finding a good mentor will help you like hone in on your skills, and it'll teach you how to start articulating your design decisions, which is another thing that employers would be looking for. So, yeah.
Amazing. I think that's such a really important point, is that you shouldn't be afraid to reach out to people and ask for help. Like, as Anders said as well, people do like to talk about themselves. They're quite happy to share their journey with you. So even if you don't engage in some sort of formal mentorship, you could probably learn just by them sharing their story. You're probably going to pick little things up from that you can resonate with, and are going to help you on your journey. But generally, on the whole, people are nice. They do want to help. And I think certainly if they're in a career that they're passionate about, and they remember what it was like being in the early part of that career and the journey they've been through to get to where they are now, they're going to want to help and pass some of that knowledge on to people at the beginning of their career as well. So I think that's a huge key takeaway from this, guys, is to research the companies that you would love to work with, that you would love to work for, the products that you love, the designs that as a designer you're taken aback by and think, whoa, this is incredible. Find out the people behind them, research the product on LinkedIn, the brand on LinkedIn, find the list of employees, look at who's within the design department, at what level of seniority, and just reach out to them. LinkedIn's great for that. You can just DM anybody. And the worst that's going to happen is they don't respond or they say no. But exactly. You could have just found yourself a mentor. And like Kirsten said, you've got to get used to kind of taking rejection and criticism anyway. So, that probably helps in a little way as well. So what would you guys say? And let's go to you, Kalista. What is one of the biggest or easiest mistakes or traps that you can kind of fall into when looking to a job? Perhaps something that just doesn't work, and you might be stuck in a way of doing it, but actually you're not going to get results that way.
I think as a junior, as a fresh graduate, you tend to go into this like path of like sending a lot of resumes out to potential recruiters. I mean, for me as a graduate of a boot camp, I mean, that's what they encourage anyway, because part of like the KPI for us was to actually send out like at least 5 applications every week, which, to be honest, is actually a lot of work if you want them to count. So I think I started out doing that, but then at the same time I realized that that's not really my style either. So I think I value quality versus quantity. So I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that juniors will usually, tend to do at the beginning. And because when you apply for, like, when you send out mass applications, you also tend to forget like what companies you apply for. And if you get selected for the interviews, you end up also not remembering or like reading the job description in detail. And that's actually a really big like faux pas, because you won't be able to perform your best. And at the same time, I think most of the time you tend to also, treat that interview as more of like a practice round rather than something that really counts. Yeah.
That's great. Dee, have you got anything to add to that? I know that's a bit similar to what you were saying earlier.
Everything Kalista resonates with me, but in addition, I'd also say that disregarding your background and the experience you bring from your past life, you're doing yourself a massive disservice by not bringing that into your job search. So I'd spent 15 years in investment banking, but my CV after bootcamp just had only my UX stuff on there. So it looked pretty sparse. But then if you really look deeply into your background, you know that there's soft skills you can transfer to this new role, you know, things like communication, balancing stakeholder priorities, time management, project management. It's all there in your background. So you can bring that into your UX role.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think so many people will forget that with any industry applying for any job, yes, the skill set to do that job is one part of it, but you're also a human being, and actually just having all of these soft skills, the communication, the interpersonable, building relationships, all of that sort of stuff is super important. So if you've completely transitioned from a different career, but that career has got stuff that's still relevant, as in working in teams, dealing with stakeholders, that's all really important, and it can show your emotional maturity and what else you can bring to the team and the employer outside of the actual skills of doing the job. Because there's always training, right? You know, you're going in for a junior role. You don't expect to stay in that role forever. You know, part of that should be that you're going to get some form of training from the company to help bring you up to the next level. So I think if you can demonstrate on a personal side, you've got all of the right skills to fit in and the maturity to be part of a team, you've kind of already got through half of the battle. So let's talk about portfolios then, because obviously I think this is something that every junior designer thinks, oh my God, I have to have this portfolio, but I've not had the opportunity to work on stuff, to create stuff, to fill it out enough to make it worthwhile sending to anybody. How do you go about building a portfolio when you haven't had that opportunity?
I can start on that one. So I think most of us here have probably done some sort of course that probably would have taken you through maybe your first project. It will be kind of a made up one. With your portfolio, you definitely want to have at least one project on there that goes through the entire process. So the entire design thinking process. Just because I think in a junior role, they're going to want to see that you understand how that works. But with that, you want to make sure that you are telling them how you did it. You're not just like regurgitating this design thinking step-by-step process, because every project does it in a different way. So you need to make sure that within your case studies, you are telling them how you did it and why you did it in that way. And why did you choose this method of research over this method? And why did you do this type of testing over this type? So that type of thing. In terms of like finding things to put into your portfolio and like projects, my first project on my portfolio was my my first Google course project. The second one I redesigned, my dad's an artist. I redesigned his website for him and did a case study from that. My third one was I actually got a job with a startup to do an app prototype. So I did a case study from that. But you could go to anyone that has a website, anyone that has a business, go to them and ask them if they need help with one of their digital products, do some research with their customers, do a redesign, and use that for a case study.
Brilliant. Anders, anything you'd add on that?
No, I'm just joined by these brilliant people, so I don't have to say anything.
Okay,
No, I can add.
Easy.
No, I can add on. Like one of the biggest mistakes I learned really late in my career is if you're applying to a company, make it super short and brief. People are very, very busy. Not that they don't want you to reach out, because they usually want, but if you're writing an email that it's really long, they're not going to read it. Keep it short and snappy. Hey, my name is Anders. I'm a graphic designer, art director. I've been I've been looking up to you guys for 2 years. Would you mind having a coffee with me to show like 2 case studies? And that's it. And be patient. That was like one thing. And with the portfolio, I would say make it personal. You should be proud of your work. I'm really proud of the stuff that I have in my portfolio right now, but it's never going to be finished. So be prepared for that. You always need to redo your portfolio and put the best stuff on top. I was talking to the head of design at Volvo M and Klarna a couple of months back, and they spend maximum 10 seconds scrolling through a portfolio. So bear that in mind. It will go fast, and if you're lucky, they're going to reach out. But yeah, it's really harsh, but it is, I think it's really good to have that in the back of your mind. You can't please everyone. You can always please yourself, and just be open and honest and have the best work first. Yeah.
I think another thing with the portfolio is to think about it as a product as well. Your portfolio is a digital product, so treat it like you would any other product that you're designing, and think about who your users are. So your users of that product are going to be these hiring managers, these people that don't have time. So make sure that the first page that they come to has all of the information they need to get like a really quick snapshot of you as a designer.
Yeah, I think that's super important. That's a really good point to make. I think we all know that everyone is fighting for everyone's attention these days. We see it all the time, and you literally have seconds to make an impression. So it is really important that you're delivering the information you need, and you're delivering it in a way that's going to captivate people. And that does sound really high pressured. It is really hard. Long gone are the days of, a lovely, polite cover letter with a Word document CV. We are now in this digital world. And if that's the world you're wanting to go into, you have got to treat your portfolio like a product and grab that attention when you can. I think the other thing I just picked up on there, I love what you said, Anders, about taking pride in yourself. And I think that is so important, because if you believe in yourself, you're going to convey to whoever is viewing your portfolio that you are good enough. If you're handing over a portfolio or sending an email that's a little bit shaky and a little bit unsure, then they're not going to sense the confidence in yourself. And, even though you're coming in as a junior, I would imagine most employers want somebody who can come in and still execute and hit the ground running, in the sense that they want to be involved and they want to be there. They'll give you their time to train you skill-wise and bring you up, but they don't want to have to then be constantly reassuring. Don't get me wrong, we all get imposter syndrome no matter what level of our career we're at, and that is a huge indicator of a good leader as to how they handle that and how the company culture is. But you need to have that self-belief first, and really, show that you are worthy of this. Like, yeah, I am good enough to apply for this role, and I am really proud of what's in my portfolio. And there's a fantastic graphic which I'll share in the community when I find it. Again, just your wording on that, on how you can literally just flip phrases. And I always refer back to it when I'm writing emails, because I'm very much one of those polite people that's, if you had the time, I'd really appreciate if you could just be a little bit more assertive in yourself, and you'll probably notice quite a difference in the responses that you get off of the back of that. That's something I've definitely learned over the years. Okay, so what would be, before we go over to the direct questions, your one bit of top advice that you could give somebody who's sat really struggling? Perhaps they've sent loads of applications and they're just not getting either no response, or they're getting a lot of rejections. What would be your number one bit of advice for them? Let's start with Dee.
I think it's quite important to be flexible in your approach. If you're trying something and it's not working, then just take a step back and see what else you can do. So going back to my previous example of just sending all kinds of applications to every single UX related job underneath the sun, I saw that wasn't working for me. So I took a week off to just try and regroup. And that's when I started creating that spreadsheet of roles I wanted to apply for in a more deliberate and thoughtful manner. And I started seeing results with that format. So just always being aware of what you're doing and not just constantly doing the same thing over and over again.
That's great. Keep it fresh. Be able to step back and reevaluate. That's great advice. Anders?
Sorry, I was reading the chat. Oh my God, that's really, really hard. The number one advice, be patient. It really sucks, I know. I hate that answer because I'm so impatient myself. But yeah, just try to be patient and take pauses. Be nice to yourself. It's not the end of the world. Take a break, go for a run, have a beer with a friend, do something different. You can't bash your head against the wall just because people are not reaching out. They're busy, they have lives as well. So be kind to yourself. Yeah.
I love that. That is absolutely fantastic advice and definitely so important to remember. Kalista?
For myself, I would say get career advice and mentorship as early in your career as possible. Because I think that is the fastest and surest way to, validate things that or do not know, your research information, and then as well as to get like guidance to set yourself on the path to success. Otherwise, otherwise you can try and error like what I did, which is also meaningful and valuable in a different way, because along the way you will pick up hard skills and soft skills that could also potentially contribute towards something. Like for myself, my skills have, I would say my skills have helped me greatly as a UX designer, because I think I am in a position to then now empathize from the customer's point of view, the user, the end user, as well as from a business point of view. Yeah, so I can bridge that gap in that sense.
Brilliant. And Kirsten?
Yeah, so I would say focus on your network. That was like, for me, that was how I got my job, was through LinkedIn. So definitely use the connections that you have. If you know a company that you really like, maybe they don't have a junior job right now, find someone on LinkedIn and contact them anyway, because you never know. A lot of times these junior positions, they're not advertised. So you need to know someone that works there to know that job is available. So find the companies that you like, try and make some connections there and make like meaningful connections, and keep in touch with them, so that you know when these junior positions come available. And then I'll repeat with the portfolio advice. Definitely make sure you're articulating your design decisions within your case studies, and definitely make sure you've got some of your personality in your portfolio.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I come from a recruitment background, and I always used to say you don't know who the person is from a piece of paper, when we're talking old school CVs and stuff. So it is so important to put your personality out there as well, because again, we know company to company, we're all different, we're all individuals. You might suit one company culture and not another. And actually, it's nothing to do with your skills or your talent whatsoever, but actually, you're just not the right fit for that company, and they're not the right fit for you as well. I think it's just as important on this process that you have to go through a deselecting phase as well, and you have to deselect the companies that you don't want to work for because they're not right for you. They don't align with your values or the goals that you've got. So it's really important to remember that. I think, like Anders said, you can get lost in the desperation sometimes of just wanting to get a job, but when you're there, if the fit isn't right and then you're not happy, nothing is worth that sort of stress and that sort of dent in your mental health. So make sure that you're being as picky. Employers are going to be picky about who they take on. You have every right to be just as picky about the company that you want to go and work for, because let's face it, guys, we spend 5 out of 7 days a week at work. If we're not happy there, it's going to be a pretty miserable life. So I think that would be my little 2 cents for a bit of advice there as well. So what we'll do is we'll just spend a couple of minutes answering some of the questions in the chat, and then we're going to head over to the Slack community. If anybody isn't already in, there is a link in the chat to join. I will quickly approve you to let you in so you can carry on the conversation over there. But for now, and I'm going to give this one to Kirsten, So Daniel has said, when you say networking, what does that normally consist of? How do you approach people? What type of people do you approach? And how do you make the most of it?
Yeah, so I'll give you the example of how I contacted the head of my design department that I'm working for now. So I didn't just send her a message out of the blue. I followed her for a while and like would comment on posts and things like that. I think eventually, if you've commented on enough things, when you do message them, they might kind of remember that you've been around and have been interacting with their posts and things like that. When I did message her, she had posted something really cool, and I mentioned that in the message. I really like this post. It really like resonated with me, and this is what's going on, and could you help? I think if you can find some way to connect with them in that message rather than just asking them for help, they're more likely to contact you back. If you can create some sort of like personal connection in that way, they're more likely to want to help you. The types of people, definitely look for people that you enjoy their content, you like what they're designing, or you like the company, and you have the same kind of values. That's the type of people that I would look for. So I hope that answered all of those questions.
Brilliant. No, that's super useful. Thank you. And we'll take one more. What are the
I just wanted to
go
add to
ahead.
that point. I was just saying that in terms of networking, it's quite important to approach it with I guess, a servant attitude. So don't go in saying, well, I want to take from you. How can you help me? It's best to go in and think, well, how can I help you first? And I think people will be more receptive to the connection that way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And actually, Daniel has asked another question about hearing that designers are getting burnout from, too many people messaging them, asking for advice, reaching out for them. Would you say that's true? I mean, have you guys ever been met with that sort of a response from anybody?
I wish. No, not yet.
No, not yet.
Not me personally. Anyone that I've ever contacted has been pretty receptive to like getting back to me. And me personally, like, it doesn't bother me when people ask me for help. I have people message me quite a bit, and because I know how I got into this job, like, I am always open to helping people, and a lot of people, I think, probably have the same feelings about that. They want to help people get into design. So I wouldn't worry about contacting. And people may not message you back, and that's fine. I mean, that all that's going to happen is they will ignore you or say no. So
yeah, that's it. And I think this actually, what's interesting about that question, Daniel, is something that Tom Scott wrote on LinkedIn yesterday about how not everybody has a huge online presence. They're not influencers, they're not design celebrities. And I would imagine the people who are burning out are perhaps the kind of the famous ones on LinkedIn that probably have the huge followings and probably receive hundreds of messages a day of, please, could you take a look at this? And it is just that, no meaningful connection, no relationship building, just please review my portfolio, which again, it's, not many people would respond that well to that. As Dee says, you want to go in as it being a bit of a two-way thing. And like Kirsten said, you want to make those connections and build that relationship. So I would say definitely dig a little deeper for who you're going to contact. Don't just think, I'm sure we've all got 3 or 4 names that would instantly come to mind of, the big players, perhaps on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter. They're the people that are going to be inundated. But like I say, if you do a bit more digging and think about your top 5 brands or your top 5 products, find the people behind that. I guarantee I have found somebody. I'm a huge, huge fan of Innocent Drinks. I think their branding is bang on. Their social content is hilarious. They've absolutely nailed it. And I wanted to look to get some mentorship from the person behind that. Found them on LinkedIn. They had about 200 connections because they just don't focus on their brand. They're too busy building the company brand. So I think when you aren't putting yourself out there as much, you're probably not going to get as many messages. So perhaps that's kind of where that niche is, of the people that will help you, because they're not inundated every day, because they don't have thousands of followers, which, let's face it, are just vanity metrics anyway. So don't worry about that. Right, guys, what we'll do is we're going to stop there, but we're going to carry on over in the Slack. So if you aren't already, I'll just repop that link to sign up in the chat. So if you aren't already, just quickly fill out this form and you can join us over there. We're going to be on channel 2. Pop your questions in, and the guys will answer them. And even if you've got to drop off now, grab some lunch or whatever, then obviously you can catch up a little bit later on. But join us all over in the Slack community on channel 2. But before we go, a huge thank you to our wonderful guests. Thank you so much for sharing your journeys. It's so appreciated. Hopefully everybody's got a few little nuggets of wisdom from this. And as I say, all of these guys are in the Slack community as well, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to speak to you if you wanted to reach out to any of them as well. But thank you all for your time. Thank you for joining. Let's go over to Slack. I'll see you there.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.